trademark on the standardized car. So there's the patent on the standardized car, and what it means to be, have standardization in the auto industry. So there's the patent application and the approval down here is signed off on and everything else. So that's why the 1913 Cole that you saw in the picture said the standardized car on the badge, because it was actually trademarked to Cole having this standardized car. Okay, so he didn't stop there. It wasn't just about marketing, right? This was real. This was real engineering. So Cole organized the $1 Million Standardization Conference in Indianapolis. This is actually the front picture of the Cole stenographer's report from the whole conference. And this document's actually here in the Gilmore Research Library, if anyone ever wants to read it. But I'm going to actually give you some highlights. So if we look at who was actually at the $1 Million Standardization Conference, we had Edwin Moulton from the Timken Axle Company in Detroit. We had several people there. You have A.M. Knobloch from the Northway Motor Company. Northway was, Durant's engine division for GM. You had G.E. Weilander from the Gilmore Company, right? Gilmore Steering, big name. Drummond from Detroit Steel Products. R.J. Firestone from the Firestone Company. More people from Firestone. Spencer from Hydraulic Press Steel. Houston Taylor from the Taylor Manufacturing Company. Steiger from Stromberg. Franklin Peterson from Spicer. Kendall from Warner Instruments, right? They make all the gauges, Warner gauges, vacuum tanks, and all that sort of stuff. Collins from the Jackson Tom Company from Jackson, Michigan. They made a lot of tops for cars at the time. J.J. Cole was obviously there. Not sure what the Mahin company was. But anyways, it goes on. Kettering was there as well. And Kettering actually wrote a blurb on the conference. But the whole point was, so if we can actually get into this here, when we get into this, the $1 Million Conference, here's some pictures from it. One of the goals was for all of these engineering, all those top minds in the auto industry to get together and to figure out standardization. How do we all work together as a car company and suppliers and make that vision work where everything can fit together, work together, and still allow individual innovation? And that's what the $1 Million Standardization Conference was about. Now, why was it a $1 Million Standardization Conference? Why $1 million? Because that's what it cost to put on. To get everyone there, for all the stuff, for all the reports, for just all the engineering that happened. Like here's some pictures, where they actually tore apart chassis. And everyone brought parts and their components and put everything together. You got Firestone down there, working on stuff. I mean, they were literally there for a while, figuring all this stuff out. It wasn't just a marketing thing. It was real work. Yes, exactly. Exactly what you wear in the shop, right? So they were working on this stuff and going through everything. There's a Gilmore and the steering wheels and columns and gears and figuring everything out. This is one of my favorite things in the 13 Cole is Taylor. The guy's name is Houston Taylor. He invented the Taylor and Oil automatic tire pump. And so the 13 Cole had an automatic tire pump right on the side of the unit, right after the Delco generator. You flipped a big gear, the shaft would turn a flapper in there, and it was an onboard air compressor. You hook your air pros up, and you could go and fill up all your tires. Right? And it's a pretty cool device to have on a car from 1913 at the time. So again, that was about Cole saying driving innovation and having other things and everything else. And again, the 13 Cole Series 9 was cheaper than the Cadillac that had more stuff, right? Like that. Come on. Let's see. There we go. All right. Okay. All right. So that's the group of automobile insurance named immediately after the analytical study discussion of the new Cole Series 9. You know, that was kind of everyone who was there in their group photo at the end of the event. This was the everyone that was there, so much bigger list than what I showed you. This is the technical features of the Cole, the standardized car in 1913. So you went through all the different components there. And here's more. That's that. This is the Taylor and Oil automatic tire pump right there. Okay. So then, after the $1 million conference, by the way, J.J. Cole was also really good at marketing. So he never wasted a good opportunity for some marketing kind of stuff. So this copy of the Saturday Evening Post showed up July in 1913 in people's homes. Saturday Evening Post was a big publication at the time. Right? This was probably, you know, the equivalent of the New York Times today, or you know, one of those magazines or something. And he published the largest automotive ad and most expensive automotive ad that had ever been released to the public. It was an 8-page ad, all about the new Cole Series 9 and the standardized car. And why was it such a long ad? Well, it was because he was explaining standardization, what it meant, and why it was important to people. And I'll show you some pages, but at the same time, I know the lighting isn't good, so you can check out this later, but here's actually 2 pages from that New York Post ad. So you can see the size here. This is actually this page right here. I'll pass it around. Take a look at it. But standardization is empty word to those who have not sensed its meaning. Right? He said standardization took the experience of Bell against the telephone. You know, the Watts engine, the transcontinental, you know, the Rome and built the Olympics, right? Standardization has turned night and day, right? He just really made it up, and now standardization heralds her newest achievement, a standardized car, right? And so he's saying that because you now have standardization, you can get the best, just like every other great thing that's ever happened in the world. Right? So these are the different ads, different components here, and then as you actually see, there's all of the standard components that are in the Cole. There's probably a better list here of what those are. One of the other things, that if you read the whole ad, you see this. You see in the right, it's kind of a blow-up excerpt from one of the pages. Master blueprints. This was a Cole idea and something that Cole brought to the $1 Million Standardization Conference, which was a map, because at the time, blueprints were all held by the suppliers, right? Those companies and everyone else for their individual components. Well, what Cole did is they took all those and they actually made master blueprints for all their cars about how everything goes together, and how they work together, and how everything can be greater together. So Cole actually started the term, or created the master blueprints in the auto industry. So as we take a look here, those were all the different models. Now Cole did actually use 2 chassis. 1913, 1914, and 1915 were the only 3 years that Cole used 2 chassis. Every other year from 1909 to 1925, Cole had standardized on 1 chassis for all the cars. Now the reason, the delineation, was that they had the 4-cylinder and the 6-cylinder at the time. And the 4-cylinders were 120-inch wheelbase, and the 6-cylinders were 136-inch wheelbases. So big car. All right, so that's kind of the summary of that. Now, when we take a look at the 13 Cole Series 9, There's only 3 surviving standardized cars left. That's it. So the one we have is this one down here. It was at the museum last summer. I was talking to Fred, if the weather hadn't been so bad, we would have brought it up, put it out front for everyone to take a look at, but unfortunately the snow did not cooperate. A few things I want to point out. In the upper right-hand corner here, this dashboard, it is a metal dashboard, and Hendricks wrote an article on that dashboard in 2010 and said that they believe that it's the inspiration for the modern dashboard. Now, why is that? Well, it's more sleek. It has an instrument cluster around the steering wheel, has an opening glove box with a lock, and it has the clock in here, right? So when you think about our glove boxes that started in the 50s and everything, how did they look? Instrument cluster around the steering wheel, glove box on the right-hand side of the car, that opened up and you could store things in it. For those of you who've seen cars in 1913, are there any other dashboards that look like that? No, not really. They're very haphazard, they're wood. Gauges are sometimes mounted down by the floor, all over the place, right? So it's very interesting. This engine is a 50 horsepower, 320 cubic inch 4-cylinder engine. That's what the engine looks like. You got the Stromberg carburetor, the Delco distributor. This had the Kettering's early electric starter and complete electrical system. The Cadillac was the first one to have about 4 months sooner than Cole. So Cadillac gets all the credit. Though Charles Crawford spent time with Kettering, and they actually engineered 2 steps out of the starting sequence that you have to do with a Cadillac. So it's much easier. It actually starts pretty much just about like a Model A. You got the foot pedal down there. The only thing that you got to do extra is you got to press the Vibra start button, which gets the flywheel moving, so the Bendix will engage. But that's about it. The Cadillac, there's a couple other things you got to do at the same time. So again, going back to Cole's idea of standardization, you can have a standard component like a Delco electrical system with starter and everything else, but we can allow some of our own engineering into that to make it better, without ruining the same standards and everything else, and how it looks and everything. So Cole, again, one of the things they did is they took, to prove how good the car was going to be and everything, they took the Cole Transcontinental test car on a 2,400 mile journey that went from Indianapolis all the way up to Seattle, down the coast, down into Mexico, and back up through Nevada and Arizona, and back to Indianapolis. And they took that big journey and didn't have a breakdown or any other issues. Charles Crawford himself went on a journey, and 200 Cole engineers. Now along the way, they out west, they found a bear cub, and he wouldn't leave him alone. And so they decided to take him along, and they named him Standard, the Cole Cub. So Standard, the Cole Cub, went with them everywhere. Now, when they were staying at hotels and everything, they took Standard, the Cole Cub, with them to dinner. So we have pictures of Standard the bear sitting at the dinner table with the Cole engineers at the different stops. So yeah, that became part of the marketing campaign after that. So. All right, so that was 1913 and 1914. Things were going, pretty good. Cole was selling about 2,000, 3,000 cars a year. So a respectable amount of cars. The car average prices were anywhere from $1,800 to $2,500. So a very expensive car, but they were cheaper than a Cadillac still. And then, in January, it was January 20th of 1915, Cole introduced the V8. Okay? Now, does anyone know who was credited with the first production V8 and when they came out with it? Cadillac, when? close, but nope. No. It was actually October of 1914. So 3 months earlier than Cole. Okay? Now, Cole and Cadillac both used Northway to build the engines. So Northway built all Cadillac engines, Northway built all Cole engines. Okay, so they were completely different engines though, and I'll explain in a minute. So Charles Crawford, the chief engineer, went to the Northway Engine Company in Detroit and spent 6 months there. 6 months working side by side with the Northway engineers on the Cole version of the V8. And they kept all the information separate from the Cadillac, which is really interesting, right? Because Durand and one Cadillac, one Northway, and everything else, right? But, so Crawford spent all their time working on Cole's version of the V8. So, the Cole V8 versus the Cadillac V8. Cadillac, October 14, Cole, January of 15. Both Northway built. The Cadillac V8 was a 314 cubic inch for 70 horsepower. Cole was 346.4 cubic inch for 80 horsepower. So bigger, more powerful engine. Cadillac had solid heads. You had to do repair from underneath the engine. How convenient is that? Not very convenient. Cole had detachable cylinder heads for each manual, so for easy manuals. Right? So the heads come off, you're good to go. So Cole was the first car company, another first, to create a 90-degree flathead V8 with detachable cylinder heads. So here's some pictures. The Cadillac V8 down here. As you see, solid heads. You got the plugs, you got the primer cups. This is how you can get some access into things, but no headlights. The Cole V8 right here. You got where the head bolts, heads come off, you got the spark plugs, etc. Right? So this actually, I've had several people. When I've had one of our Coles with the V8s in them out, show people, they're like, "Whoa, did you put a 30s Ford flathead engine in there?" No, right? Because that's what it looks like. So a lot of people think Ford came out with the flathead V8 and everything in the 30s. No. They just waited until they were cheap enough because you get an expensive car, you're buying the technology. Right? So it wasn't an everyman's car. Alright. So getting back to the standards, Cole worked a lot with this, that's the Society of Automotive Engineers, discussing 8-cylinder motels at the Claypool Hotel in Indianapolis. A lot of SAE meetings and conferences took place in Indianapolis because you had quite a few auto companies there, and also Cole was heavily involved. And so they were all talking about the V8 characteristics and everything else, and Charles Crawford gave lots of presentations on it. And then also, the SAE, there's all the SAE engineers, all the representatives, they're all there, and then this is when they're dissecting the Twin 6, the Packard Twin 6, which was the other big engine. So it was kind of being decided in that time frame, that mid-teens time, which way things were going to go for big engines. Was it going to be a V8 type of engine, or was it going to be a twin? Like a Twin 6, right? So some decisions were really being made for the industry. So Charles Crawford and Cole really argued about how the V8 is not a twin. It's not like a Twin 4. You can't think of it that way. Because it's completely balanced and all put together, where a Twin 6 is really 2 6-cylinders mated together with different characteristics. So that was a lot of discussion that was happening. And again, this was the article about the different comparative between the Twin 6 and the V8. And so when they talked about, when they ended up coming out of this, Crawford wrote a whole paper, as you see, this magazine article talks about how the Crawford paper he wrote was warmly discussed. because the V8 had better characteristics, it made more sense. Some of those sorts of things as we got into that. Another article that came out there, but, you know, Cole wrote lots of articles for the trade journals. And this is the new Cole Northway 8-cylinder engine, as you see there. I showed you one. And again, Cole still in 15 was, you know, saying, hey, we're the originators and builders of the standardized car, and by the way, we're still the standardized car, right? So that still carried on. That whole concept. And these are all the standard components, you know, that are in here. And when we look at that list of companies, some of these companies are still around today, right? So when Cole's mission was to use the companies, the suppliers that were or would become the standard in the automotive industry, he was pretty darn successful in picking them, right? And actually, a lot of the stuff that came on the standardization conference and everything else helped these companies as well. You know, utilize that same mindset with other automotive companies at the time. All right, so Cole ended up being very successful with their Cole V8. It ran really well in 15, ran really well. So actually, Cole acquired the complete output of the Northway plant, the Northway's new plant in Detroit, for their V8s. He bought them all, right? So it was starting to go good. Now, another first with the engines, Cole pioneered the aluminum piston. So right since the start, Cole used aluminum pistons. Cole was very big on alloys. That's actually one of the reasons why we figure there's not many surviving Coles left. A lot of them had aluminum bodies. Since 1910, the whole bottom of the engine is aluminum. The crankcase, everything's aluminum. Fan blade's aluminum. The 13 Cole has tungsten valves. Right? I mean, it just has lots of alloys that during the war, you know, people were paying for, not just do your car. So a lot of them were big cars with lots of materials. So let's see how this is there. So in 1916, Cole becomes the first auto company to standardize on only the V8. Cole completely got rid of the 4-cylinder and the 6-cylinder engines, and you could only buy a Cole from 1969 with a V8. That's all you could get. Now the other thing is, when we talk about standardization, 12 body styles on one chassis for a small car company. And still keeping things cheaper than what it would cost you to buy a Cadillac. So that's a very big feat to be able to do that. The reason why they were able to do that again was the standardization, how they were able to do it, because they could cut out a lot of manufacturing costs. Now, for those of you, this is the inside of the V8 engine. Looks a lot like, when you look like a Model A or something, you take the head off and everything, you got the valves, you got the pistons, everything else. It's very similar engine design that carried on for a long time. All right, so one of the other things that was a big problem with V-type engines was, with aluminum heads and everything, was balance and the piston clearance, especially when things got heat and everything else to them. So Cole was the one who solved the clearance, the piston clearance test issues with V8 engines. And this is a document from AAA. They brought it to test and write the summary document, and then they wrote the document that they went and tested. There's a Cole, car. They went through here and tested and everything, and they wanted to prove the reliability and interchangeability with the pistons and make sure they won't have any problems with piston chatter and a lot of the other things that is pretty common for 8-cylinder engines. And so they, AAA, after all the testing and everything was done, certified it that it was solved the problem. And then that became the standard in the industry. Cadillac in 18 ended up taking most of the Cole engine design and Northway and leveraged it for their cars. So if you started looking at a Cadillac engine from then on, it looks very similar. All right, so going back to, this is just an aside here, and where he takes his design cues and some of where his mind was at. Remember who J.J. Cole's other friend was growing up and where he was at? The Wright brothers. So one of the things that J.J. Cole did in 1911 was he bought a Wright brothers plane. He put a Cole 50-cylinder, 4-cylinder engine on it, and entered the race, the transcontinental race, that went from the west coast to the east coast, to prove that you could fly from the west to the east, which was very hard because you had the mountain ranges, and being able to get the plane up and over and everything else. So this is Cole and his pilot, Ron Fowler, and they entered the race. Now, they ended up flying. Rob ended up crashing the plane in the mountains. But the Cole engineering team was able to repair the plane in place, get it running again, and get it going. So they ended up then flying, and the Cole plane ended up finishing third in that transcontinental race. So it was a big accomplishment at the time. But because J.J. Cole was big into airplanes and that whole industry, he was big into ballooning, right? There was a big Cole balloon and everything. They took a lot of the design cues and everything from that history and everything and launched in 1918 the Cole Aero 8, which had a lot of design cues and everything from airplanes and everything. So that was the Cole Aero 8, and where that came from is just his dabbling in aeronautics. All right, so let's talk about Cole's last big burst in the industry, right? Cole was the first in 1923 to introduce balloon tires on a production automobile. So this car right here, it's my son with the 23 two-person coupe. That was the experimental test car that Cole used in partnership with Firestone to test balloon tires and to get them working and figure out everything you needed to do. So let's talk about this a little bit. So why balloon tires? What are balloon tires? Up until this point, tires on cars were very narrow, right? They kind of look like tires. And they're very high pressure. Think 60 pounds per square inch. So what happens when you have a narrow tire with high pressure? Well, one, you get blowups, right? Tires are pumping this, right? The other thing is you get a lot of skidding. There's not a lot of friction on that road, right? So if you want to stop, you want to do that. The other thing is you hit bumps or anything with those high pressure tires. It's not the most comfortable ride, right? So Firestone started the development again. Again, Cole and Harvey were friends, and Firestone started developing on these to make wider, low pressure tires. So balloon tires at the time, that's what they were called, were much wider tires, more like how you think today. Maybe not as wide today, right? But much wider than that. And they were about 30 pounds per square inch. So not much tire pressure at all. So when we look at the advantages, you get much greater comfort, right? They're softer, wider, you get a greater comfort. You're double the braking surface. So you're going to stop much quicker. You're going to have less skidding again because you've got the greater friction area. Because you're only running 28 to 30, 26, it even says here, pounds of pressure in there, less blowups. So if you hit that very sharp rock or whatever, you're probably not going to get a blowout because you're not really giving a lot of pressure on that. And then also number 7, improved style. Well, that's what I have a taste, right? Anyways, so that's what balloon tires were and why balloon tires were really an achievement or interesting. So this is an ad from Cole when they launched it. It says Cole, the car that introduced balloon tires to America. Now, one of the other